Hi guys, it's Kathy. I hope you're doing well. All right, finally got OJ ready. It took me a few minutes. I struggled. It's fine. Whatever. So we made it to April. April of 1995. That's where we're at today. That's where we're going. Where were you in April of 1995? None of you remember. Some of you are going to remember, but most of you won't remember where you were in April of 1995. I mean, I guess you'll know your address. I remember my address, but it was a long time ago. It was a different person ago, 3 or 4 different people ago. Let's go, let's go, let's go. I miss who this guy is, so. Don't share in your honor's faith in making that assumption.
Well, just have Detective Harper here. All right.
Detective
Yes,
Harper.
This case will recess until 8:30 a.m. Monday. All right, we'll reconvene court at 1:30 on the sentencing matter.
Then you place it on this table, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
All right. And then it was filmed then by Mr. Ford, is that correct, sir?
That's correct. It was also photographed by still photography also.
Now, as I understand your testimony also, the video was shot after the recovery of all the evidence in the residence, is that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Now, did you make any notes or do you have any police reports at all with reference to your receipt of the tape and placing it in your drawer and then later in the file cabinet?
No, sir.
Have you made any notes or any reports about your subsequent turning over of this tape to the district attorney's office?
No, sir.
And so that we're clear, what date was that you turned it over to the DA's office?
That was, I believe it was turned over to them on March 24th.
It was a Friday.
Yes, sir.
Very well, thank you very kindly.
Ms. Lewis?
Good morning, Detective Looper.
Good morning.
The glove that you recovered from the top drawer of that one of those chest of drawers in the defendant's, was that in the defendant's master bedroom walk-in closet?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
And was that glove alone or did it have a mate when you recovered it?
It was a lone glove located in the left corner of the drawer.
And is the fact that it was a lone glove what caused you to have some concern that it might match the other glove recovered on the property?
Certainly was a consideration, yes, ma'am.
Did you determine that that glove that, well, first the one that you recovered was a right-handed glove?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were aware that the glove recovered along the south pathway was also a right-handed glove? Or
No, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. You became aware of that after speaking to Detective Lang or Van Adder later on?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
Now, your duty at Rockingham was to direct the execution of the search warrant, which Detective Van Adder had obtained. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
And you were left in charge of the scene for that purpose because Detectives Van Adder and Lang, the most senior lead detectives on the case, went downtown for the purpose of speaking with Mr. Simpson. Is that right?
Well, I knew that Detective Van Adder had responded. I was unaware that Detective Lang had also responded to Robbery Homicide Division.
Do you recall at this time what time the SID photographer arrived on the premises?
Which SID photographer?
Did you cause an SID photographer to come to take crime scene photos for your use in investigating that location as a crime scene?
There was one already at the location when I arrived.
And do you know what time he or she had arrived?
Without looking at the crime scene log, I couldn't be accurate, but it was in the morning sometime.
Would that refresh your recollection to take a look at the Rockingham crime scene log?
Yes, ma'am, it will.
Your Honor, I have an unmarked up copy of that, which I'll show you now. this be marked, I'm not sure what exhibit number for purposes of
For
this
the
hearing?
purposes of this motion, I guess the videotape is,
1068 defense.
let's make this people's next in order. This is to refresh the recollection of the witness, is my understanding. As
Yes,
to the timing of when certain personnel arrived at the scene.
Well, Your Honor, the problem is, he wasn't there. I'm not clear his document, just reading that document for the first recollection.
But he was there, was my understanding.
Well, it depends on what time. Well, let's see that.
and people's next in order would be,
158.
I'm sorry, 1058?
158. People's 158. Excuse me.
Detective Looper, what time did you personally arrive at that Rockingham location?
Arrived about 12:10, 12:15 in the afternoon on the 13th.
And you indicated that the SID photographer had indeed arrived prior to your arrival.
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
Now, how were you in the presence of the SID photographer when that photographer was taking photos at the scene?
On the exterior shots, no. On the interior shots, yes.
Did you attempt to direct the photographer on those interior shots
That's
of what to photograph?
that's correct, yes, ma'am.
And your purpose in doing so was to preserve for investigative purposes the crime scene, the Rockingham crime scene, is that correct?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
Do you recall approximately what time what time you first noticed the SID photographer taking photographs of the crime scene?
1:45. We're talking about the inside of the residence was about approximately 1:45.
Even the exterior, do you recall about what time that might have been?
That would have been 12:20 to 12:30, I suppose, somewhere in that neighborhood.
When the SID photographer was taking photos, had all of the evidence which you eventually recovered been taken into possession yet, or was much of it still there, recognizing there were not a lot of things besides blood recovered on the 13th?
The purpose of the initial photographs was to record it as we found it. And later on, as the evidence was collected, it was also photographed.
Do we have Defense 1068, the videotape? Do you all have it? To play just the beginning of Defense 1068 for purposes of showing timing of the arrival of the videographer. I tell you what, could you
Tape.
stop it and rewind? While he's doing that, Detective Looper, after completing the photographs of the crime scene and recovering evidence, did you make an attempt to do something with regard to the premises in terms of the way you had first found them?
I returned it to as close as the way I had found it, maybe a little better.
And that was prior to the videotape being taken?
That's correct. And the purpose of that was to ensure that both Detective Lang and Van Adder got a proper feel for the rooms in the residence as I had found them.
So the way that something appears on the videotape may not reflect the way it appeared at some point between the crime scene photos and a point thereafter when the evidence was actually collected. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
So one could not tell, or you could not tell from looking just at the crime scene videotape in relation to the crime scene photos, you could not necessarily tell when evidence was collected. Is that accurate?
That would be accurate, yes, ma'am.
Now, what is your best recollection as far as when the items of real evidence were collected from the interior of the location? In terms of the timing, whether it was prior or after the shooting of the videotape?
It was prior to the shooting of the videotape, anywhere from 2:30 to 4:15, I would say.
And was it your belief that the socks had been recovered from the carpet in the master bedroom prior to the videotape being shot?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you've watched the videotape, have you not?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you notice that the tape happens to stop before showing the location where the socks had been recovered from?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's also possible the socks were still there when the videotape was shot.
Sustained. Sustained.
So you can't tell from looking at the videotape alone exactly when the socks were recovered. Is that fair?
Sustained. I have seen the tape now 5 times, so, and here in court 2 additional times.
Were you present with the videographer when he was videotaping the master bedroom?
No, ma'am.
Is the tape back up? You just played it during first couple of minutes. All right, you notice, Detective Looper, as the tape is flowing, that shows 211 on the, apparently on the equipment itself.
Yes, ma'am.
And is that the arrival of Mr. Atkins, who testified earlier at the scene? Does it appear to be that?
It would appear to be that, yes, ma'am.
And that's Detective Jim Harper, who was shown just with greeting him.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you can stop it now, please. And the is your arrival time shown on the crime scene log of Rockingham, People's 158 for identification?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you have an independent recollection of exactly when the videographer arrived at the crime scene?
Not an independent recollection without looking at the crime scene, crime scene log.
Would it indeed help refresh your recollection to take a look at that crime scene log?
Certainly would.
May I approach?
Yes.
Showing you People's 158 for identification, the crime scene log, would you take a look at that and see if that refreshes your recollection as to the arrival of Mr. Atkins and Mr. Ford?
It would appear that it would, yes, ma'am.
And what time did they arrive?
10 minutes after 3 in the afternoon.
And do you have an independent recollection of exactly when they left as well?
Not an independent recollection because I didn't see them leave, but according to the crime scene log shows.
Ask the question.
Sustained.
When is your best recollection of the last time you personally saw Mr. Atkins and Mr. Ford at the crime scene at the Rockingham location?
Probably 3:45 in the afternoon.
During the time that the video was being shot, was either Detective Lang or Detective Phillips there?
No.
Do you recall what time, do you have an independent recollection of what time Detective Lang and or Detective Phillips arrived at the, I'm sorry, Detective Van Atter arrived at the Rockingham location?
They arrived approximately 10 minutes after 5, 20 minutes after 5, right in that neighborhood.
Now, how did it come about that this particular videotape was shot? You were in charge of the search warrant execution there at the crime scene. Did someone give you that idea at some point in time?
About very long
Detective Harper approached me after his arrival and suggested that we videotape the valuables in the residence, and I agreed.
And what was your purpose in doing that?
The purpose of it was strictly for civil litigation. We knew that Mr. Simpson had quite a few valuable and personal articles that he had won throughout the years, and we certainly didn't want to be accused at a later date for either breaking them up or stealing them or whatever.
So were you the person who actually made the decision to have that done, to have the scene videotape?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you direct Detective Harrow, or someone else to call SID and have someone come out for that purpose?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
In fact, in terms of your concern that the crime scene not sustain damage when the search warrant was executed, did you ensure that something was done with regard to the vanity in the master bedroom and fingerprint dust?
Yes, ma'am. The vanity, well, not the vanity, you're talking about the linen closet, I believe.
Was there a location where newspapers were placed to ensure that the dust did not hurt the carpeting?
Yes, ma'am. It was a linen closet or a cabinet at the top of the stairs that prior to being fingerprinted, I requested that newspaper be put on the ground so as not to damage the carpet.
You've reviewed all of the crime scene photographs from Rockingham,
Yes, ma'am, I have.
and of course, you've also seen the videotape, as you told us. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything shown on the videotape, any area, as best you can recall, that's not also shown on the photographs themselves?
Yes, ma'am.
And what area is that?
That would have been the linen closet area at the top of the stairs.
The one you just described?
Yes, ma'am.
And did that linen closet turn out to have any particular evidentiary significance?
Had no evidentiary significance at the time, no, ma'am.
Nothing was recovered from that closet?
No prints were recovered, no scientific evidence was recovered, nothing.
After the videotape was completed, was there a time when you personally obtained possession of it again? Or I should say for the first time, when you personally got the tape?
I got it on the 14th in the morning.
June?
Yes, ma'am, June '94.
Do you recall from whom you received it?
I received it from Detective Harrell.
And where were you at that time?
I was in my office at Parker Center.
And what did you do with the tape?
Went upstairs to the electronics section, viewed it, and returned down to the office to prepare my employee report regarding the search. And I was informed that it wasn't necessary based on the fact that the captain had been at the scene.
Was it necessary to do an employee report of the existence of the videotape?
No, and a employee report regarding the execution of the warrant and how the premises were before we arrived, as well as how they were left.
You indicated the captain, is that Captain Gartland?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
You indicated he had been at the scene?
Yes, ma'am.
A couple of minutes ago, you informed defense counsel that there were 5 detectives at the scene, to the best of your recollection. Do you recall when Captain Gartland was there?
He was there after I left, and I believe counsel was making reference to who was present during the taping of the residence.
Now, where did you place the videotape after taking possession of it on the 14th?
I put it in my desk drawer.
And did there come a point in time when you moved it to the room at RHD, which was set aside for the Simpson case?
Yes, ma'am.
Where inside that room did you place it?
It was placed in a filing cabinet, a locking file cabinet, along with several notebooks that I had in my possession.
Have you been primarily involved since that time of the execution of that search warrant, primarily involved with a certain aspect of the investigation of clues and other items related to this case?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
And what area of the investigation has been the focus of your involvement?
Chicago.
And have you made several or numerous trips to Chicago over the course of the last several months?
It's vague.
Roughly how many times have you been to Chicago as part of the investigation in this case?
I've been there 4 times.
And in addition to the Simpson case, have you had other murder cases which you've been responsible for investigating and solving?
Yes, ma'am, I have 4 others.
And in terms of when the murders occurred, how many of those did the murders occur prior to the murders here on June 12th?
All but 1.
So 3 of the 4 were murder cases which came into existence after the murders in this case. Is that
No.
right?
The other way around.
Okay, so 3 of the murders occurred and then 1 came into existence, or 1 murder occurred, I should say, after the murders in this case.
That's right. Yes, ma'am.
And have any of those 4 cases been completed in terms of through conviction or acquittal or some final disposition?
Sustained.
Your Honor, it just goes to show that he was.
Sustained.
So you have, is it fair to say that you've been working very hard, not only on the Simpson case, but on other murder cases as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Did there come a point in time when you recalled the existence of the administrative civil liability videotape?
I haven't found it yet. I'm looking, but I haven't found it.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think you told us Friday, under Mr. Cochran's questioning, that Detective Van Adder alerted you that you would be testifying with regard to the search in this case. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And subsequent to that, you started to think of crime scene photos and anything else that might be around in that regard. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
And was your purpose in doing that thinking of aids that would be helpful in refreshing your recollection of the events that transpired during the execution of the search warrant on the 13th?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that approximately at some point after that, is that when you thought of this videotape as well?
That's correct.
Now, when you thought of it, when did you, or what did you do in terms of going looking for the videotape?
Well, the first place I went to was the SID electronics lab, figuring that it had been booked. However, I found that it had not been booked. Then I remembered that I'd seen it in the filing cabinet along with several other notebooks early on in the year. So I went up there and there it was.
So it was in the identical location where you had left it on June 4th, well, at some point when it was moved, when you moved it into the war room?
Yes, ma'am.
The war room meaning the room set aside at RHD for the Simpson case?
Yes, ma'am.
So it appeared that no one else had moved it, or it did not appear to have been moved at all within that file cabinet. Is that accurate?
That would be accurate. Yes, ma'am.
How was this tape marked?
It was marked with the standard label, just O.J. Simpson's house.
You indicated Friday that someone notified the city attorney's office of the existence of the tape.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you do that yourself or did someone else?
That wasn't done by me, no, ma'am.
Are you aware of what the purpose was in doing so?
Not really.
Oh, well, he said not really.
I'm sure the court knows this, but for the record, is the city attorney's office, do the city attorneys represent the department when it's sued for things such as destruction of property during search warrants?
That's right. Yes, ma'am.
They're the department's lawyers, so to speak.
Yes,
Not just
ma'am.
so to speak, but they are.
Yes, ma'am.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Certainly.
Detective Looper, why didn't you have the videographer record the glove along the south side of Rockingham?
Well, the purpose of the tape was not to record where evidence was located. It wasn't a crime scene per se tape. Had it been, we would have been recording the inside of the Bronco and other areas, and just that wasn't the purpose of it.
And
Overruled.
And what were the blood drops on the driveway videotaped?
No, ma'am.
Now, did you notice that apparently a couple of blood drops on the foyer of the interior of the house were videotaped?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am. I saw that.
And did you notice that the wood where those drops appear also appears to be light colored wood?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
So those blood drops would represent, in addition to perhaps crime scene purposes, damage to the property, whether caused by LAPD or someone else, but they would represent some minor amount of damage. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
With regard to the glove allegedly found on the south side of the property, by the time you arrived at the location in the afternoon of June 13th, that glove had long since been removed. Isn't that correct, sir?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
So it'd be nothing to photograph. Isn't that correct, sir?
That's correct, sir.
Now, by the way, while you were out there on June 13th in the afternoon, Executive Looper, did you see Marcia Clark from the DA's office out there?
She was there. Yes, sir.
So she was actually there. At what time was she there?
She had to have been there somewhere in the neighborhood of, excuse me, between 2:20 and 3 o'clock, somewhere in that neighborhood.
And how long did she stay, if you recall?
She was there long enough to get a walkthrough, and then she left. I don't know. She was there probably 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes. I don't know.
Did you see her at some time while she's there sitting at a table talking to Detective Furman?
Overruled.
No, sir, I did not.
You did not see her being briefed by Detective Furman at all?
No, sir.
Who gave her this walkthrough?
I did.
And what time did the walkthrough start, if you recall?
Overruled. It's
Uh,
probably
just-
the most relevant question I've heard so far this morning.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay.
This
She's not
this
used
is
to the
a
rules, Your Honor.
discovery sanctions issue, I
Right.
think.
Council's not used to the rules either, Your Honor. We don't argue back and forth. Thank
No,
you.
we're in an informal setting at
Oh,
this
we can do it
point.
now? Oh, good, Chase. Thank you.
No, we can't, but
Okay.
I'll let it slide
All right.
at the
Thanks,
moment.
Chase. All right.
But
I'm
we've
sorry.
wasted a lot of time. All I'm interested in is what happened to the tape? Why did it disappear? When did it come to light? How did it come to light? Who knew it existed and when?
Okay. See if we can answer those questions real
All right.
quickly. Detective Looper, other than you, let's start with who knew about the existence of this tape? We know that you knew about it, right?
That's correct.
Mr. Ford knew about it.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Atkins knew about it.
Yes.
Captain Garland knew about it.
I don't believe Bog knew about it. I mean, Captain Gartland knew about it.
Well, did you talk to him about having to fill out this report or not having to fill
No,
out this
I
report?
was informed that he had been at the scene, and knowing the procedure within the department, if the captain is there, that negates the 15-7 or the employee report.
All right. Now, in addition to that, the 5 detectives that we talked about who were at the scene knew about this tape. Harrow, Harper, et cetera, right?
Overruled.
They saw the tape being shot, didn't they?
I know that Detective Harrow and Harper were aware of the tape. I was aware of the tape. I don't believe my partner was aware of it, and I don't know if Detective Roberts from West LA was aware of it or not.
In addition to that, there were some patrol officers also at the location. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And so that we're clear, part of this tape was shot outside, so people outside could see that it was being shot. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Overruled.
And anybody who was outside in the close enough could see that video was being shot outside. Isn't that right, sir?
You would assume that, yes,
All
sir.
right. And then you cannot tell us about LaFall, your partner, whether he knew or not.
That's correct.
Did you talk to him about it at all?
No, sir.
Okay. And you can't tell us whether or not Roberts knew or not. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Now back to Ms. Clark. Ms. Clark was there and you took her on a walkthrough after the search warrant had been completed?
After the evidence had been located, yes, sir.
Right. So the search warrant had been executed at this point. And you took her, tell the court briefly where you took her. You went through this walkthrough.
I took her through the bottom location of the residence of the first floor, to show where some of the presumptive tests I wanted done. Took her upstairs, showed her the vanity, not the vanity, I'm sorry, the linen closet, and showed her socks and the blood evidence that had been found in the bathroom. And took her, I think, to the side of the house, showed her a wire that I wanted checked, and what was in the trash can there by the entryway to the office. I believe it was an airline ticket. And then on the exterior, there was a bench seat right there by the front door that had a luggage tag thrown on one end of it. And that was also pointed out to her.
Did you make a report of all of your observations with Ms. Clark?
No, sir.
You know, if you've seen any report with reference to your taking her through the premises and noting these objects?
No, sir.
You never made a report like that, did you?
No, sir.
Did Marcia Clark sign in on the log when she came to that residence?
You won't find her on that log. No, sir.
Why won't we?
Good question. I don't know.
Well, was there any other log that she signed in on when she came there?
To the Rockingham location?
Yes, the Rockingham.
No, sir. Not that I'm aware of.
So you have no reports which tell you exactly what time she got there. So you have to give us only your independent recollection. Is that correct?
That's
Without
correct. Yes,
reports.
sir.
So you're not sure of the exact time she got there and the exact time she left, are you?
I'm as sure as within 45 minutes of when she did arrive and when she might have left, based on the sign-out log of Bundy.
But why is Bundy relevant? She went to Bundy after she was at Rockingham?
She went to Bundy first and then came out to our location, is my understanding.
Had you seen her at Bundy?
No, sir.
All right. But you know, through subsequent information, you found out she'd been to Bundy, then she came to Rockingham.
Oh, well,
if you
That's
know.
correct, yes,
All
sir.
right. And basically, you cannot tell us exactly what time she got there or what time she left, can you?
I can just give you an approximation, sir.
All right. And what's your approximation again?
Somewhere between 14:20 or 2:20 in the afternoon to 3 o'clock.
That she arrived.
Right.
Right.
That's how much time she'd spent. That's approximate time.
All right. Is that the approximate time that she arrived or the time she spent?
The entire time when she arrived, spent, and left is just an approximation on my part.
Was Ms. Clark accompanied by anyone else when she arrived there, sir?
No, sir.
She's by herself?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
You didn't see any other deputy DAs there that time?
No, sir.
Did you see her talking with any other detectives other than yourself while she was there, Detective Looper?
No.
Now, you stayed until about 6:35 in the afternoon or evening, right?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Per the log. And you were still there when Lang and Van Etter came, isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And they came sometime after about 5:15 or 5:20, right?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Now, with regard to the shooting of this tape, it's true, is it not, that with regard to videotape, one of the best ways of preserving evidence for later presentation to a jury in a case would be a videotape of the crime scenes. Isn't that correct?
Well, I think that's a matter of opinion.
Well, I'm just asking you. Would, as a detective,
No,
would you think,
I disagree with that.
you don't think that an actual videotape of what went on would be more accurate than, say, still photographs?
I think still photographs are a lot more effective than video.
Eric, in this area of
All right.
inquiry, although interesting, is
All right,
not
Joe.
relevant to the
Then I'll
issue.
move right on then, Your Honor. It is interesting, though,
It
I
is.
think, right, but so stipulated. In this instance, however, you shot this video primarily for purposes of civil liability. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Was there a city attorney at the scene?
No, sir.
Would you agree with Mr. Atkins if he indicated, however, the videotape also served the purpose of helping detectives in the course of their investigation if they wanted to come back and serve another search warrant as to the location of certain items?
Well, I've never had an occasion to use it, so I really wouldn't want to even speculate.
You wouldn't speculate on that.
No, sir.
So that we're clear, you took Ms. Clark on a tour of the outside of the premises and the inside. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
When Lang and Van Etter arrived at the premises, did you have occasion to talk with them?
Yes, sir.
And you and Detectives Lang and Van Adder all work out of robbery homicide. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Briefly, Your Honor. Detective Looper, actually, at that point in time, your only purpose in having that videotape taken was for civil liability reasons. Isn't that true?
Yes, ma'am.
And your best recollection is that Marcia Clark left the premises at about 3 o'clock or by 3 o'clock within that time frame.
That in that approximate time frame. Yes, ma'am.
And the videographer arrived at approximately, as we know from seeing the videotape, approximately 3:11 or so. Isn't that true?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Detective Looper, thank you very much, sir. Mr. Carker.
I have one last question.
Sure.
Do you recall? Do you recall whether or not Mr. Atkins and Mr. Ford had arrived prior to the time that Ms. Clark arrived?
No, they arrived after Ms. Clark had been there and gone, sir.
You sure about that?
Yes, sir.
Does your log, of course, there's no log that reflects that, is there? I'm asking. Is there any log that reflects that?
As I indicated earlier, I don't have her checked in or checked out at the Rockingham location, and I'm giving you the best recollection that I can.
So one more question. So if you have them in at 3:10 in the afternoon, it's possible Ms. Clark may have been there as late as 3:10, isn't it? Well, I'm asking. It's possible, isn't it?
No, because she wasn't there. She and I stuck together, excuse me, stuck together, poor use of the word. We were together through that time while she was there, and I did see her leave before they arrived.
You want
on
me
the
to
scene.
buy
All
beef?
right, so you sure about
Kelly, thank you so much. Legendary, thank you.
that, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so when you told us that she came perhaps at 2:10, stayed till perhaps 3 o'clock or so, those were just estimates, weren't they?
That,
2:20 to 3:10.
that's my recollection. Yes, sir.
All right, but if you were to, you saw this log and the log indicates they arrived by 3:10, isn't that correct? Atkins and Ford.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
All right, Detective Looper, thank you very much. Your excuse, sir.
You're welcome, sir.
Mr. Carker, any of the witnesses on this issue? All right. All right, Detective Harper.
You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Please have a seat in the witness stand and state and spell your first and last name for the record.
James Arthur Harper, Harper.
Morning, Detective Harper. How are you this morning? Sir, I'd like to direct your attention back to the date of June 13th, 1994. In the afternoon hours, you were assigned as a detective from robbery homicide and were at the Rockingham location, were you?
That's correct.
And to the best of your recollection, what time did you arrive at that location on that date?
At 10 minutes to 2 in the afternoon.
And did you arrive in the company of some other officers?
Yes.
Who'd you come with?
My partner, Detective Richard Harrow, and Detective Cliff LaFall.
All right, any other officers?
We came in the same car, so I don't believe that there was anyone else.
So the three of you came together,
Yes.
Harrow, yourself, and LaFall.
Yes.
All right. And when you arrived at the location, did you have occasion to see some other officers there, some other detectives from robbery homicide?
Yes.
Who did you see there?
Detective Furman, Roberts, and Detective Phillips, Detective Looper, and it was quite a few other people there too. That I don't recall any other names.
All right, so would I be correct in assuming there were at least 7 detectives there after you arrived with your 3?
At least 7, yes.
So there'd be at least you, the 3 of you, Looper, Furman, Phillips, Roberts, were all there at that point, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, at some time after you arrived, were you aware of the arrival of a Mr. Atkins and Mr. Ford from the photographic lab of the Scientific Investigation Division?
Yes.
In the best of your recollection, what time did they arrive?
I believe they got there about 10 minutes after 3.
About 3:10?
About 3:10, yeah.
And when they arrived, did you have occasion to speak with Mr. Ford, an actual photographer yourself?
Yes, I did.
Did you give him some instructions, sir?
Yes, I did.
And would you tell the court what you told Mr. Ford upon his arrival at about 3:10 in the afternoon on June 13th?
I met Mr. Ford and Mr. Atkins out front at the Rockingham gate, and I told them that we needed them to photograph first the outside of the estate
Buttered
and
noodles.
also
Making easy during a
inside.
stream.
And it was for administrative purposes. And that's basically what I told them. We started outside. I directed them to shoot the outside and the sides of both the north and the south side of the house.
All right, you specifically told Ford to shoot the south side of the house.
Yes, the garage area.
And did you see him shoot the south side of the house?
Yes, I was standing right next to him.
And that, as far as you know, that's on the video, the shooting of the south side of the Simpson residence.
I believe so.
And with regard to this administrative purposes that you spoke about, the police didn't do any damage to the outside of the house, did
They lost the video, JJJ. They lost it. That's why we don't have it.
they?
No.
As you just had the outside of the house shot, though, is that correct?
Yes.
North and south sides?
Yes.
Do you know whether or not there's a walkway down the south side of the house? Was there any shots made of that particular part of the house? The walkway on the south side?
I believe it was done from a distance, from the street,
Okay.
as he was walking toward. He was shooting as he was walking toward the house.
Okay, and that was done by Ford.
Yes.
All right. And then, how long, if you know, did he spend shooting the exterior of the Rockingham residence?
Probably, he was there a total of probably maybe an hour and 10 minutes, but I think it was only like 25 minutes of actual film from when I remember watching it. It was
Okay.
only like 25 minutes long.
Is that 25 minutes of outside and interior? Or
Yes, the whole
the
shot.
whole thing? All right, now, while Mr. Ford was there and shooting, Marcia Clark came, did she not?
I believe I remember seeing her there at some point.
And you recall that while she was there, was Ford shooting the video during that period of time? Do you recall?
I don't recall if he was or not.
All right, and tell us what time is your best recollection that Marcia Clark arrived on the scene?
We got there at, like I said, we got there at 10 minutes to 2. We left at 4:30, I believe. So she got there sometime between that time. I don't recall. I just remember seeing her briefly.
Between 1:50 and 4:30.
Yes.
And have you had occasion to review any logs or anything that might refresh your recollection as to what time she actually arrived?
No, I have not.
If she doesn't appear on the log, is that an indication that she just didn't sign in when she got there?
That's a possibility.
Do you recall, once she got there, tell the court what you observed her doing, if anything?
I believe at one point I saw her talking to Detective Furman.
She was seated at a table, wasn't she, sitting down outside talking to Detective Furman?
At one point, yes.
And how long had she been there at the time that she was seated at this table talking to Detective Furman?
I don't recall because I don't remember seeing her come in.
So you don't know when she'd gotten there. You just
No.
saw her talking to him.
Yes.
How long did you see them talking, if you know?
They started outside, and then I believe they came inside because of the helicopters and the news people were above.
taking pictures of them, right?
I assume, yes.
So
And
they
they
start,
came,
sorry.
and they came inside and started talking. So total of probably that I saw, the conversation had not stopped. So I don't know how long she talked to him.
Well, just tell the court then how much time did you see them talking, even keeping in mind you didn't see them when they started and keeping in mind you didn't see them when they finished. How long did you see them talking?
Maybe 5 minutes.
And part of that conversation was outside and then part was inside. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Was she accompanied by anybody else from the district attorney's office, if you know?
I believe Mr. Hodgman was there, but I'm not sure.
You think Bill Hodgman was there?
I believe so.
And did he seem to come with her?
I have no idea.
And when she was talking to Furman, was Hodgman present?
If in fact he was there, yes, I believe that's where I saw him.
Okay. Now, did you see her talking with any of the officers while she was there?
No,
Did you ever see any of the officers take her on a walkthrough of the premises at Rockingham while she was there?
no,
Were you, during most of this time, from the time you arrived there at 1:50 till 4:30, were you outside the premises and also inside?
yes, on the first floor and outside in the yard and by the garage, mostly in the garage area.
And as I understand it, the instructions to Mr. Ford was to shoot any and everything that was recovered in the course of the search warrant, right?
No,
Did you understand that was what, did you come to know that was his understanding of what he was supposed to do that day?
that's not what
That's what Ford said.
that's not what I told him.
That's not what you told him to do.
No,
You told him to shoot outside.
that right.
All right.
Correct.
And then when you went inside, did some other detective talk to him?
Yes,
And who would that have been?
it's my partner, Detective Richard Harrow.
Harrow. Were you present when Harrow spoke with him?
No, I believe I had another assignment in the garage area, so I just left and turned him over to Harrow. So I don't know what they discussed.
You don't know what they discussed, right? Now, when Marsha Clark was out there, did you talk with her at all while she was
No.
there that day? Did you know who she was at that point?
Yes, I know Marsh.
You knew her from before.
Yes.
Have you seen any reports, any police reports generated in this case that would help us out on the times that Ms. Clark arrived, who she talked to, and what she observed?
He should have been pro se. Definitely. We'd be done by now.
Have just a second, Your Honor. As I understand your testimony, Detective Harper, you never, while you were there, you don't recall seeing Marsha Clark leave the time she left.
No, I do not.
Did you see how she and Mr. Hodgman got there?
No, I did not.
Thank you very kindly, sir.
Ms. Lewis?
Detective Harper, were you present during the June 28th search warrant at Rockingham, the execution of that warrant?
Yes,
And Ms. Clark was present on that occasion as well.
yes,
Are you sure within your own mind that it was on the 13th that you saw her talking to Detective Furman rather than on the 28th?
now that I reflect on it, it could have been on the 28th, but I remember seeing her there one of those days, either the 13th or the 28th.
But you're not positive which occasion it was?
Now that I think about it, no.
Your Honor, I believe the Bundy crime scene log has already been marked as an exhibit in this case. What is it? I can't read it. It has not?
That's what I was doing yesterday when you said, "Oh, you look mad." Yes. I was trying to make that parody video while I was doing this. It was fun. It was a great idea. Julie had a great idea.
I don't know the number. But I do have another copy, albeit a little bit marked up. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Detective Harper, looking at this other copy of what we know as the Bundy crime scene log from June 13th, do you see an entry on there of Marsha Clark arriving there at approximately, I think that says 2 o'clock or 2:02 and leaving at 2:15?
Bundy log.
Well, this copy is not the marked copy. It's been marked there.
has the, the court's copy. You may. And what exhibit number is that, Mr.
This
Gordon?
is exhibit, yeah, I guess it's defense 1006, 1006. And showing you this one, Detective Harper, it shows the same as the copy I just showed you, that Ms. Clark arrived at Bundy at 2:02 and left Bundy at 2:15.
Is that Bundy or Rockingham?
Bundy.
I was never
That's
at.
what this shows, though, right?
Yes, it does, but I was never at.
This is cross-examination, the record speaks for itself. It doesn't help. He was never there.
All right, I already have it here.
Yeah, the court has heard previous testimony with regard to the Bundy crime scene log, so I'd ask the court to consider that evidence in conjunction with this hearing as well. And to your knowledge, is it approximately a 5-minute drive from Bundy to Rockingham?
That's correct.
It was an interesting case, but it's fine. Family stuff is very important. That does sound fascinating.
I think you just explained to us that your recollection as to between the 13th and the 28th is not real clear as far as when Ms. Clark was there. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And could it also be true that Mr. Hodgman was not present on the 13th, but was present on the 28th?
Sustained. Sustained.
What your recollection of seeing Mr. Hodgman is shaky as far as whether you saw him there on the 13th or the 28th. Is that fair?
Use the word shaky, Your Honor. I'm not sure that's a very.
I understand what shaky means. I understand what it means.
Is that a fair statement, Detective?
Yes.
I have the crime scene log from the 28th of June, which I'd like to mark people's next in order, 158.9.
That's irrelevant to talking about 13.
Overruled.
And council's had for many months, so I'm sure it's on meditation. Detective Harper, showing you the log from Rockingham on June 28th. It shows your arrival time on here as 1500 hours or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Is that an accurate assessment of the time that you arrived?
Yes.
And it shows you're leaving at 1816, I believe, which would be 6:16 p.m. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's the time that you actually did leave on the 28th.
Yes.
So the time that you were there on the 13th roughly corresponds to the time you were there on the 28th in terms of both being in the afternoon hours. Is that correct?
Yes,
And could that be one cause for your lack of perfect recollection as far as what took place on which occasion, as far as who was present?
that's true because I know I
I
was there on
leave
both
you
days and maybe I
with
got them
Miss
confused.
Lewis and everything running perfectly fine. I'll be back in a few minutes, guys. Be good.
So obviously I did.
Thank you. No further questions.
Just finally, as you sit there now, your best recollection is that Marsha Clark arrived at some time in the afternoon hours at the Rockingham residence. Is that correct? On June 13th.
I'm not sure if it was the 13th or the 28th now that I think about it, but I know one of those days she was there, and it was in the afternoon after I got there.
All right.
So
Before on direct examination, you were fairly clear that she had arrived. You just weren't sure about how. Isn't that correct?
it's correct.
Because you remember that on the 13th, she had this conversation with Detective Furman. Remember that?
Objection states the testimony.
Overruled.
Remember she talked to Furman on the 13th?
If one of those days, either the 28th or the 13th, and I'm not sure which day.
Was Furman there on the 28th?
I believe so. I saw him both days that I was there, the 13th and the 28th.
And was Roberts there on the 28th? You know?
The 28th?
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure about that.
At any rate, now I want you to think back so we can give the court your absolute best recollection. On the 13th, the day this video was shot, the day after these bodies were found, you recall that Miss Marsha Clark was there at the Rockingham location between 2:30 and 3 o'clock or so in the afternoon. Do you recall that? You recall?
I can't lock myself into one of those days, or the 13th or the 28th, because now that I've thought about it, it could have been the 13th or it could have been the 28th.
Well, isn't it possible she was there on both times?
It's a possibility, but I don't recall.
Do you recall her wearing a light colored dress on the 13th?
I remember wearing a white dress, but I don't know which date it was.
Thank you. I have nothing further at this point here. This witness.
All right, Detective Harper, thank you very much, sir.
May I approach? Just real quick.
Keeping in mind what the issues are here,
Yes, Your Honor, just a couple of questions. Does the log from Rockingham on the 28th indicate Detective Furman was present on that date from 2:45 to 6:40 in the evening?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Nothing further, Detective Harper.
all right, thank you, Detective.
One other witness I'd like to call here.
All right.
I'd like to call Marsha Clark.
All right, Ms.
Your
Clark.
Honor, I object to Ms. Clark being called to testify as she's the lead trial lawyer in this case. It's not necessary. There's no evidence in the record at this point to support that she was ever there at the same time the videographer was there. The recollect, I'm sorry.
Ms. Clark present if you're going to
Well,
testify.
Ms. Clark certainly knows the issue. The testimony is that she left at approximately 2:50, I believe, or 2:50 or 3.
No, I would object to her making the statement. Ms. Clark's going to be quiet.
And the videographer arrived at about
Object.
3:10.
Noted. Overruled. All right, I don't need Ms. Clark's testimony as a witness. I simply need her statement to the court as to her recollection as when she was there, and more pertinently, when she found out this tape existed. And I accept that representation of any counsel here as officers of the court. I don't need it under oath from the witness stand. Good morning, Ms. Clark.
Morning, Robert. I thought I had a day off. Yes, I can tell the court exactly when I arrived at Rockingham. And I would like to address the statement to Mr. Levin as well. But I arrived at Rockingham at about 12:30 or 12:45. I had earlier spoken with Detective Van Adder, who indicated he was going to seek a search warrant.
Is this the famous Harvey Levin miss timestamped?
Exactly,
All right.
exactly, Your Honor. And Detective Van Adder had briefly told me what he had in terms of probable cause. I said, it sounds like you've got it. He said he'd present it to the judge, and he asked me to meet him at Rockingham. I said, well, there's no point in my going out there until you have the warrant signed and delivered. Please let me know when that's done. He called and he told me that, and that was at about 10:45, I believe. I was working on another case, and I didn't leave the office till about 12. And I arrived, I believe, 12:30, 1:45 at Rockingham. I met Detective Looper there. There were very few people there. It was everything very quiet. And apparently the defendant had already come and gone by the time I got there. Detective Looper walked me around a little bit. I think Detective Roberts did. I think Detective Furman did. On the 13th, I never sat outside at a table with anybody. I was there briefly. I made requests of them concerning what to photograph. And in what sequence, and these are still photographs, in what sequence to photograph so that it would be understandable and clear, and asked them to make sure that they picked up certain items in the search. And he indicated to me, Detective Looper, that there was no search team available at the time. They were in a holding pattern for a while. I had other work to do, so I didn't wait for the search team, and I left Rockingham at about 5 minutes to 2. I had to go back down to the 10 freeway going east, so I took Bundy down, and the crime scene was on my way. And as is my habit, I always visit crime scenes to get a feeling for the spatial connections of everything and the dimensions. And I stopped by Bundy on my way back to the office at about 2 o'clock. I met with the officer who had the perimeter at that time. I don't remember his name, but the tape was still up, and he indicated no one was allowed inside, and I said, fine. And I left very shortly thereafter. And I think the crime scene log reflects that I left Bundy. I was at Bundy from 2 to 2:15. That's correct. And I left Bundy at least at 2:15, if not 2:10. Went back to the office. At no time did I see a videographer present at Rockingham. I can assure the court that if I had, I would have been delighted, and I would have asked them to do one at Bundy as well. But I didn't know they were doing that. I did not learn of that videotape until a couple days ago when when the defense apparently indicated to us that it knew about a videotape. And then I asked, after having heard from someone else about it, that was in the last few days, very recent. So I never knew they had one. And I asked about it. I asked for what purpose they performed it and why we didn't know. And if they did one at Rockingham, why didn't they do one at Bundy? And the reason for that, they explained, is
I don't
that
need to know the reason.
you already know. Okay. So I learned it was for administrative purposes, and that's all I knew. So I went to Rockingham first, and then I went to Bundy, and the crime scene log shows when I was at Bundy and indicates very clearly that I was not around when the videographer was there. And I saw the man come in to testify. Was that on Friday? I'd never seen him before in my life. So that was the first day I'd ever seen him.
All right, thank you, counsel. All right, I have before me, I take it, Mr. Cochran, have you completed presenting evidence?
I have no further witnesses.
All right, people wish to present anything?
Wish to present the evidence?
Yes. All right, I have before me a defendant's request for sanctions, and including monetary sanctions and instructions to the jury. I'll hear argument.
Your Honor, I do want to note that I just received this at 9:15 this morning. I barely had time to read it, let alone confer with other counsel on the case in terms of responding to this. I would request an opportunity to respond.
I have
I
no
mean,
objection.
a period of time during which to confer with my colleagues before responding.
I have no objection. It was filed this morning.
All right. Then I'll hear argument about at 4:30.
4:30 today may be a little tough, that's for obvious reasons.
Oh, I forgot. You're right. You're right.
4:30 would be tough today.
You're right.
1:30 or 4:30 today is a bad day.
You're right.
There is another hearing, I believe, at 1:30.
Right. And we need to be somewhere at 5:40.
Yes.
All right. All right, tomorrow then we'll take it up.
What was that here?
Tomorrow. We have the motion on the coroner's testimony and motion on coroner's photographs today at 1:30. Okay. Now let's do that tomorrow. All right, anything else before we invite the jurors to rejoin us?
Oh, Your Honor, I would move that People's 159 be admitted into evidence for purposes of this hearing and Defense 1006 be considered for the hearing.
All right, they'll be,
as well as 158.
they'll be accepted for purposes of the motion. Yes, Mr. All right,
Mr. Newcomb, could you smart the one, please?
all right, who's going to be presenting Mr. Fung?
Lieutenant Goldberg will be, and I
Right.
believe we're in the process of notifying him. And I also post in Defense 1068 for purposes of this hearing.
All right.
Their hearing reports are on the way out.
What's the E ETA?
Like the time the elevators take, which can be 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes.
All right, Madam Reporter, do we need to change? All right, let's change court reporters and we'll start with the boards. You're Neufeld, you had some objection to some of the boards? All right, which board, what's your objection?
Your Honor, as you may recall, there was a ruling by Your Honor that the luminol testing and other presumptive tests would not be admissible as evidence for the presence of blood in this case. And one of the boards, unless there's independent confirmatory evidence of one sort or another, one of the boards depicts Mr. Fung standing next to a drain in a sink, holding up a Q-tip with a pink color on it to suggest that this was a positive result from a phenolphthalein test for the presence of blood. Number one, there was no confirmatory test on either of those items. Number two, as it's been already brought out to the court, and I think was the basis for the court's ruling, there are many other things which could test positive on those circumstances, particularly for the two drains, Your Honor. There is a vast body of literature which suggests that just normal bacteria and other microorganisms, the kinds of things that collect in wet drains and damp drains, would test positive. And it just has no basis being introduced or brought into this case at this time. The correct procedure would have been to take the contents out of those drains and bring them back to the laboratory and do some kind of test to confirm the presence of blood or to reject the presence of blood. And to our knowledge, that was never done. And I believe a lot of this you already know about from your initial ruling. So I would simply ask the court to instruct the people to remove those two photographs from the board.
Those are your objections.
Well, as to that one board, yes.
All right. Which board is that? Yes. Somebody want to give Mr. Fairtlow a hand here so we don't waste all our time? Is this one you're speaking of?
Yes, Your Honor. It's, this photograph here, which doesn't have a number on the photograph, so I can't say directly, but it's in the lower right-hand corner. And it's, he's holding up a Q-tip next to a drain in the sink. I'd also point out, Your Honor, that the Q-tip itself has a reddish color, which would suggest blood, but it's not. The reddish color is the chemical reaction from the hydrogen peroxide. So it's even more prejudicial for that reason as well, Your Honor. So it's the drain shot here, and then there's a second drain shot, as you can see in the lower, there's two drain shots actually, in the lower left-hand corner. And I would ask that all three of those be taken out. Number 14, which is straight down at the bottom of the diagram, is in a different category, because in 14 they actually did do follow-up testing at the laboratory, and so I think number 14 would fit within your Honor's exception, but the drain pictures do not.
All right, Mr. Goldberg.
Well, first of all, Your Honor, it would be nice if counsel would have given us some notice as to specifically what he had to object to on this board, since we have already plotted out what our direct examination is going to be. And as the court can now tell, it does involve presentation of evidence through the use of these boards. As to the phenolphthalein test results, I did not bring down my legal notebook because, again, I did not know that they were going to address this one specifically. What I would say is this preliminarily. First of all, both sides have been introducing phenolphthalein testing throughout the trial in front of the jury, left and right. I'd point that out to the court, and that's why we are a little bit surprised by counsel's now objecting to it when I think both sides elicited that kind of evidence from the detectives. The other thing that I'd say is that the court did rule on the luminol test, but I don't recall the court making any ruling on phenolphthalein. There is a difference because the phenolphthalein test in this case is actually a two-stage process, which involves the use of phenolphthalein and then the addition of hydrogen peroxide. So it is more specific than any of the other presumptive blood tests, including luminol. So the court's ruling on one would not have any applicability to the other. And finally, in the case of People versus Coleman, and again, I didn't bring down my legal notebook, but it's a California Supreme Court case. The California Supreme Court discussed the issue of presumptive blood testing and says that it does come in, but there has to be some evidence as to what kind of a test you're talking about. In that case, a police officer who was not a criminalist used something that was called a heme stick, and he didn't really know what it was, and the Supreme Court didn't know what it was because there wasn't anything in the record. And they said that although in California there was a very lengthy history, and they cited several much earlier cases of forensic blood testing or presumptive blood testing coming in, that you had to have some evidence as to what the test was, so that the court could determine whether it was one of the tests or one of the nature of tests that have been allowed in previous cases and that have been around for a while. So I think that the issue is pretty dispositively resolved in the state of California by our Supreme Court.
What's the site on?
Your Honor, as I said, I didn't bring down my legal notebook because I didn't know specifically that we were going to address this. Perhaps I could call up and have someone.
Do you anticipate getting to this board by the close of our session this morning?
I don't think I anticipate getting to this board by the close of business, Your Honor, this morning. But I do anticipate possibly discussing other phenolphthalein tests, such as on the Bronco. Now, I don't know whether the defense has any objection to those. In fact, I think that was already elicited.
All right, my recollection of our luminol testing is that we did not discuss phenolphthalein testing. All right, Mr. Neufeld.
Your Honor, we're not opposed to a reference to the fact that phenolphthalein testing was done. We're opposed to them introducing any of the results of that phenolphthalein testing. That's the difference here. To simply say that they tested various items, I mean, that goes without saying. That's one of the things they did. I don't understand the gentleman's point on the issue of the power of this presumptive test. It is widely known in the literature that this particular test is no more powerful or sensitive because it's a two-stage test. That's just the nature of the test, that the second thing you do is subject it to hydrogen peroxide to get a reaction. There is literature that not only talks about the presence of bacteria readily setting off a positive result, which is why most practitioners would never dare to use it in connection with a drain. But more importantly, Your Honor, there is additional literature which suggests that copper pipes, for instance, will give you that same kind of positive hit. It's very different to use a phenotest with drains and drain pipes than it is to use it with the wooden floor, for instance, where you don't have that same risk involved, where you see the small reddish smear that you see in number 14. We don't have that situation here. My recollection was, and I'll have to check with the transcript, but that Your Honor did rule on the pheno test as well as the luminol test. And I may be mistaken about that, but that's the information I had before I stood up this morning.
All right, that does not comport with my recollection. However, my recollection could be inaccurate on that. But since Mr. Goldberg indicates that he won't get to that by the noon hour, we'll have the opportunity to check. All right, Mr. Goldberg, I'm going to direct you not to use this board until we have had the opportunity to resolve both the record and checking the Coleman case. And Mrs. Robertson, would you ask one of the law clerks to locate the Coleman case for me, please? All right.
You are also shown another board dealing with serology results. And not to waste the court's time at this point, if Mr. Goldberg can assure us that we're not going to get to the serology result board this morning, I can take that up later also. There are a variety of problems with certain specific results, and more broadly with the fact that he includes in the board inconclusive results. And since I've been practicing law, I've never seen a scientist report out results that he or she themselves deemed inconclusive. In fact, even in the reports in this case, technicians such as Yamauchi, for instance, will say, since the results were inconclusive, I will not make a statement about them in his reports. Yet on their board, they'll say things like inconclusive and then have in parentheses what the tentative results were. And I don't believe that tentative results, which are inconclusive to the technician, should see the light of day in a courtroom in front of the jury.
All right, Mr. Goldberg. Which board is this?
They're bringing it out now. It's called serology results.
All right.
Your Honor, on this particular board, the only inconclusive results that have been reported, as the court can see, with one exception, are under the category of EAP, or the erythrocyte acid phosphatase. The court may recall that in Mr. Cochran's opening statement, he claimed that there was blood under, or some biological material under the nails of Nicole Simpson. That is item number 84 on this board, and that it was a EAP type B, which was inconclusive with the defendant, who's a BA. The prosecution's position is going to be that we will demonstrate in a variety of ways, not only with conventional serology, but also with DNA testing, is that in fact what was tested underneath the fingernails of Nicole was her own blood. It can be done in a variety of ways, but part of that is what is represented on this board in the EAP category. Erythrocyte acid phosphatase is different from the other genetic markers that are used in the conventional systems in that, unlike PGM subtype, it involves not only looking at the banding pattern, but also the relative intensity of the bands, which means there's a level of subjectivity that's involved in interpreting it that is not involved in PGM subtype. The question of whether something is inconclusive or not inconclusive, therefore, involves a question that is somewhat subjective and it's resolved by the analyst. What we are trying to show here and will show is that there is a situation going on at the crime scene at Bundy where we have a number of specimens that are in states of degradation with respect to the EAP system, and that we can demonstrate circumstantially that what is happening is that the EAP subtype is degrading from a BA to a B. And this board does that almost conclusively. The science articles indicate that one of the things that we can do, and one of the things that common sense would tell you can do, is you can look at a pool of blood under the victim, or blood on the victim's clothing, which you know circumstantially has to be hers. And if you can see evidence of degradation in that sample in the EAP system, it gives you a very clear indication of what would be going on with other blood of the victims, such as underneath her fingernails. So we see, for example, on this board that item 42, which is blood underneath Nicole, is an inconclusive B. Well, we know that's hers, it's her blood. So this provides very powerful circumstantial evidence as to the defendants, as to the people's position that what we have under the fingernails is in fact degraded blood of the victim. This is a legitimate thing to do. It's a legitimate chain of circumstantial inferences for a jury to consider. And it's legitimate scientifically for our experts to consider this. I would point out that there's not a single instance here where an inconclusive result is being reported that inculpates the defendant. In other words, we don't have any reports of inconclusive results which are consistent with the defendant's EAP type and PGM subtype, which is a BA, and his PGM subtype is a 2+2-. In other words, we're not using any inconclusive results for the purposes of showing that his blood is at the scene. We're using them for the purposes of showing that Nicole's blood is under her fingernails, and it's completely unobjectionable. I find.
Why should I allow tentative results?
What?
Well, you say that these are inconclusive but indicative of.
Well, no, INC stands for inconclusive. What that means is that when the analyst looks at the PGM subtype plate or the EAP plate, it's a gel, and there's a certain banding pattern that results, that he is not comfortable enough with that subjectively to say, in fact, it is a B. In fact, it is a BA. What he is saying is that's what it looks like, but I'm not comfortable enough to make that call with certainty. What he will be able to say is he will be able to say that based upon a variety of results, and I'm not telling it to the court in as much detail as will be presented. Hopefully I won't need to for the purpose of this legal argument. What he will be able to say is that based upon the combination of what he sees happening with the EAP results at this scene, that there is very powerful circumstantial evidence that the EAP results under Nicole's fingernails, in fact, is likely to have been or may have been a BA that degraded into a B. And when the jury sees it, they will be able to come to that conclusion on their own, even without the benefit of expert testimony. And that's what this board does.
All right, thank you, counsel.
Yeah, may I respond on part of
Nope.
that?
Mr. Neufeld.
One second. He's missing a fundamental point here. And the fundamental point is that scientists do not make a habit. In fact, they never report out in a court of law, and I'm sure this is your own experience as well, on results that they can't stand behind, period. Whether it's to some degree of reasonable scientific certainty or some other comparable standard, they don't report out items which to themselves are inconclusive. It's not a question of even being tentative. Let me give you just as an example. I'll just pass up.
Mr. Neufeld, but let's talk about the specific here. Don't we have a problem created by the fact that in the defense opening argument, this particular piece of evidence was argued to be something, and then a excerpt of a police report or the criminalist report is put up and displayed to the jury and purported to have a certain result inconsistent with the parties here, whereas the actual testing indicates something that's different. Has-
It
hasn't
doesn't,
it-
Your Honor. That's the point. Here, for instance, is the analyzed evidence report in this case. And you can just take a look at it. What's the proper?
No, I've seen it.
Okay. And what it says is that the serologists themselves called the blood scrapings underneath her fingernails a B. Not an inconclusive, not a tentative, a B. Whereas all these other items, they didn't call at all. And they said, we will not make a statement on them because in our opinion, they are inconclusive. So there's a very significant distinction between the serologist's professional approach to calling the blood scrapings beneath her fingernails as a B and all these other characterizations which are inconclusive and for which the serologist did not want to make any call at all.
But
It's
shouldn't
in-
the jury know that these items were tested and the results are these are inconclusive? Isn't the jury entitled to know that?
Oh, the jury is entitled to know that they were inconclusive. I'm not disputing that. They can just say inconclusive. Our dispute, Your Honor, is a suggestion they were inconclusive but looks like an A, inconclusive but looks like a B, inconclusive but looks like a BA as is reflected on that board. The fact that the examiner said it's inconclusive means that he or she is not willing to report out the actual result other than to say it's inconclusive. That's how scientists work. That's how technicians work. And this document belies that professional approach, which is used nationwide by all technicians and scientists who do this exact kind of testing. That's the difference. In fact, in the actual report here, they don't say it looks a little bit like a B or it looks a little bit like an AB on the inconclusives. They give no answer. They just say inconclusive. Whereas for the typing of Nicole Brown Simpson's fingernails, they say specifically and unequivocally at this point in this statement, it's a B. That's the difference. So we don't have a problem with them simply saying inconclusive. The problem is them trying to hook the inconclusive with a tentative result, when the scientists themselves would never do that and don't do that.
Mr. Goldberg?
Well, see, they want to try to structure what Mr. Matheson's opinion is going to be and what he bases that opinion on. That's for the expert to decide. That's not really a legal issue. It is a scientific one. What they want, why are they so upset about this? Because this almost conclusively proves that our theory is right and theirs is wrong. Because the mere fact that these are inconclusive Bs or BAs shows that there is degradation, which is the very thing that we want to show. So saying it's inconclusive, that doesn't show anything. It doesn't demonstrate.
When do you plan on using this?
What?
When do you plan on using this board?
This would be used with Mr. Matheson, which would be towards the very tail end of my portion of the evidence that I'm presenting.
All right. I'll think about this one then.
Well, could I finish?
We're not even going to get to Mr. Fung through Mr. Fung this week, I suspect. Who's first?
Mr. Fung. Well, I don't know, because they've never given me a clear indication of how long they feel it's going to take on cross-examination. But obviously, we would like the problem resolved, Your Honor, and we feel very, very strongly about this, because this is going to give Ms. Clark the opportunity in her closing argument to stand before the jury and say, look, we can show you what's happening on the scene. And we can show you that the blood under her fingernails degraded. It's the only common sense,
My inclination,
logical
Mr.
explanation.
Goldberg, is to wait until I hear Mr. Matheson's testimony.
In a pretrial type, outside the presence of the jury,
Right. Do you intend on using this in front of the jury?
with Mr. Matheson. only.
Yes.
With
All right.
Mr. Matheson. only.
Let's proceed with Mr. Fung. I understand is your next witness.
Finally, Your Honor, the only other objection we have at this time on the boards is there's a series of boards which try and reflect the movement of certain items of evidence, beginning on June 13th, right through August, September, October. And it would be our objection to displaying the board to the jury, or at least admitting those portions of the board until a proper foundation is laid by the prosecutor. In other words, if Mr. Fung can only testify about the handling of evidence on June 13th and June 14th, then the rest of the board, which talks about those items that he collected being sent off in August, September, October, or whenever to other laboratories, that should not be on the board when it's shown to the jury at that time.
Goldberg?
I don't understand the legal basis of the objection. Is this?
Yes, we know. You don't understand. That was me. That was me. Who was playing with me? Who was giving me hearts back? I was putting hearts up, and someone else was giving them back at a red light. All right, back to work.
Like the peekaboo rule in the evidence code. Your Honor, perhaps we can show the court the board that counsel is referring to. There is absolutely nothing that is remotely prejudicial, or for that matter, even terribly interesting about these boards. It is simply a way of being able to establish something that would otherwise be extremely tedious, boring, and time consuming. And this way is only going to be slightly tedious, boring, and time consuming. And that is when the evidence came in and when it went out. And we just got
Well,
photographs.
let me just say, slightly tedious, boring, and time consuming would be a nice change, guys.
To depict all the evidence indicating its original packaging when it was received and the transmittal envelopes.
All right,
I
I'm
mean-
looking at a large display board entitled LAPD Evidence Disposition Summary.
This board is probably going to be testified to in part by a number of different witnesses, including Mr. Fung and Ms. Mazzola, who will be testifying
It's kinda
mostly to
small.
the items or
Could
exclusively
they get
to
a
the
bigger
items
one?
in the left-hand side of the column next to their names. Then Mr. Matheson would be testifying to certain items. Mr. Yamauchi would be testifying to mostly the items in the cell marked DOJ and FBI columns, which were the ones that he prepared. And then subsequently, when the witnesses come in from those laboratories, they will be testifying off the board. So it's sort of a board that in order to lay the foundation for, there are a large number of people that have to do it. But I see no reason to cover up those parts that pertain only to the witness that is testifying at the given time while we do it. The jury can't even see what's on the other photographs.
Mr. Goldberg is suggesting that there's a tedious exception to the hearsay rule. All we're simply saying is that under the laws of California, one has to lay a proper foundation before evidence can be introduced and exhibited to the jury. And obviously, Mr. Fung and Ms. Mazzola are not the witnesses who can lay the proper foundation, suggesting this continual chain of certain items to these other laboratories. As Your Honor is well aware, the defense is going to vigorously challenge the chain of custody in this case, has so in prior proceedings, and will continue to during this trial. And this exhibit makes it all seem like it happened in a very straightforward fashion, but obviously the initial witnesses are not competent to testify to the subsequent chain of custody and transfer of various items at a time and place where they weren't involved.
All right, thank you, counsel. The objection's overruled. At this time, prosecution can use this exhibit with the understanding that there'll be a motion to strike if they don't tie it all up at the end of the conclusion of the trial.
Unless counsel had more questions on the boards.
No, he sat down, so I assume that means no. And also, before we start with this new phase, Mr. Shapiro and Ms. Clark, I would suggest that you reintroduce to the jury the new members of the teams, so to speak, sitting at counsel table so that they know who they are and what their purpose is for being here. All right. Mr. Goldberg.
Thank you. One of the witnesses that we're going to be calling is Colin Yamauchi, who did some testing in this case on the 14th and 15th, and also some conventional testing later in June. And in addition, is almost exclusively the witness that will testify to the bulk of the chain of custody in terms of packaging items for the purposes of being shipped out to certain laboratories, with only a few exceptions. What we would like to do is we would like to divide his testimony
Sounds riveting.
up, as I discussed with counsel on Friday, into two parts and call him once during the chain of custody portion of the case, and then again later on to discuss his DNA results that occurred on the 14th and 15th. The way that I would propose that working, and I discussed this proposal with counsel, was Mr. Yamauchi would testify that on the 14th of June, he went into the evidence control unit, the evidence processing room, where the evidence was located, and he took certain samplings of that evidence, and then took that evidence to the serology laboratory to begin his analysis. His direct examination would effectively then end at that point, and then skip to the 15th when he took an additional set of samples, describe how he sampled them, walk them up to the laboratory door in effect, and then skip over to the next relevant point in his testimony with those two spots, the blank spots, so to speak, involving the actual testing to be presented later. So we would ask the court's permission to allow us to do that. I'm not sure whether counsel objects to that. And if the court is inclined to allow us to do that, and I don't see any reason why the court wouldn't be, there is another issue that I'd like to discuss with respect to whether a certain.
Counsel, let's talk about this when we have Mr. Yamaguchi testify. I've had the jury sitting back here now for almost 2 hours, and this is something we don't need to decide right now.
Okay.
All right, let's have the jurors.
This is 15 seconds. If I
Does it
could.
have to do with Mr. Fung?
No, Your Honor. No.
No.
This afternoon. Save me a minute this afternoon.
All right. My apologies to you for having kept you so long. As I indicated to you last week, we are going to now change the focus of the case to the actual collection and testing of the evidence in this case. And I indicated to you there were a number of preliminary issues that I had to determine to see what evidence was going to be presented to you. And just for example, this morning I've taken 6 pages of notes just on the hearings that we've had today. So we've been hard at work since 8:30 this morning, and I just wanted you to know that we know that you're back there waiting for us. We have some new attorneys present in the courtroom for this phase of the trial. And Ms. Clark, let me start with you. Do you wish to introduce the members of your team who will be presenting this evidence?
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I introduced these members of the team at the time of our opening statement, but it's been a long time since then. You've probably forgotten. This is Mr. Hank Goldberg,
Good morning.
and this is Mr. Woody Clark, and this is Mr. Rock Harmon. These gentlemen will be presenting the evidence concerning the physical evidence, the collection of it, and the analysis of it, both for conventional serology and for the analysis of DNA.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Mr. Shapiro.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We have 3 lawyers who will be assisting us in this phase of the evidence. Mr. Peter Neufeld, who has been with us since the beginning, but is making his first appearance before the jury.
Morning.
Mr. Barry Scheck, who has also been with us from the beginning and making his first appearance here.
Morning.
And Mr. Robert Blazier, who has been a member of our team and will be aiding in the presentation of the evidence and cross-examination of expert witnesses.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
counsel.
you, Your Honor.
All right, people's next witness. All right.
Raise your right hand, please. You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause now pleading before this court should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please have a seat in the witness stand and state and spell your first and last names for the record.
My name is Dennis Fung, DennisFung.
Mr. Goldberg.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Fung. What is your occupation and your assignment?
I am a criminalist employed by the Los Angeles Police Department. I am assigned to the Firearms Analysis Unit of the Scientific Investigation Division.
And that's for the LAPD?
Yes.
Right. And were you so employed on June the 13th of 1994?
Yes, I was.
Sir, on June the 13th of 1994, were you responsible for collecting certain evidence at 360 North Rockingham and 875 Bundy in the city of Los Angeles?
Yes.
And later on June the 14th, were you responsible for collecting certain evidence in a Bronco that had been impounded from the Rockingham location?
Yes.
Now, before getting into that, I'd like to ask you some questions about your training and experience. First of all, you said you're a criminalist.
Yes.
What is a criminalist, sir?
A criminalist is somebody who employs the principles of the natural and physical sciences to identify, document, preserve, and analyze evidence that is related to a crime. He later testifies to his findings in a court of law.
And is a criminalist someone then who is involved in the area of forensic sciences?
Yes.
What does that term forensic sciences include?
The forensic sciences is the discipline that employs or uses natural and physical sciences such as chemistry, biology, physics, and just about any other science you can think of to determine issues related to a court of law.
So it's basically a broad group of different kinds of sciences that are brought to
Not
bear
for
to
a while.
resolve issues regarding evidence in a courtroom.
Yes.
All right. In order to become a criminalist, did you have to have some formal education?
Yes, I did.
And where did that take place?
I received a Bachelor of Science degree in criminalistics from the California State University at Long Beach.
So it's a 4-year degree?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And did you receive any other bachelor's degree at the California State University, Long Beach?
Yes, I did. I also received a Bachelor of Arts degree in chemistry from the California State University at Long Beach.
And when was that?
That was in 1985.
When you were going through college, particularly during the criminalistics portion of your formal education, did you process mock crime scenes?
Yes, I did.
All right. And while you were going to college, did you have any internship that you
What?
Yes, I
Look
did
at
an
her.
internship
Look at
at
her.
the Orange County Sheriff's Office Crime Lab.
Approximately when was that?
That was approximately September of 1982 to December of 1982.
Okay. And did the Sheriff's Department in Orange County employ criminalists?
Yes, they did. Or
Did
do.
you ever have an opportunity when you were interning with them to go out to crime scenes and see the way crime scenes were processed?
Yes.
When you went out to crime scenes that were processed by the Sheriff's Department in Orange County, were they processed by criminalists or did they use some other category of personnel?
I don't know. I forgot my mic was on. It looks like we have like at least 3 months of science evidence, DNA, the B team. So, whew, yeah, we got a bit to go. But once we get through that, we should get back to me swearing at the screen again, over and over and over.
Their crime scenes that were not homicides were processed by forensic specialists.
Okay, is that what they called them?
Yes.
And what is a forensic specialist?
A forensic specialist is somebody who goes out to crime scenes and takes photographs and collects evidence and documents the evidence also.
Do they have the same formal education that you have in order to become a criminalist?
I don't believe the requirements are the same, no.
Okay. Is there any similar category of person that's employed by the Los Angeles Police Department?
No.
Okay. So LAPD is using criminalists at their crime scenes?
Yes.
Now, within the local law enforcement community here in Southern California, are there also people that are called evidence technicians?
Yes.
And what are they?
Evidence technicians are people who will go out to crime scenes and collect evidence and document the evidence also.
Okay. When you were at Orange County, did you have the opportunity to see criminalists working in the laboratory setting?
Yes,
Right, but you just didn't see them working in the field.
that's correct. Yes.
All right. Now, in addition to the formal education and training that you just described, have you also continued to take courses related to the field of criminalistics since you graduated?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And have you taken seminars by the American Academy of Forensic Sciences?
Yes.
And by the, what is that?
The American Academy of Forensic Sciences is a professional organization of forensic scientists. They deal specifically with topics related to my field.
Okay. And have you also taken courses through the California Association of Criminalists?
Yes.
And what is the California Association of Criminalists?
The California Association of Criminalists is another professional organization dealing with forensic sciences.
Do you have a curricula vitae that summarizes your formal education and some of the courses that you've taken since you graduated?
Yes, I do.
And do you have memorized all the courses you took and when you took them, or would you need to refer to that to give us some more specific information?
I would have to refer to them.
Can you please do so?
Yes.
Sir, have you taken quite a few courses since you graduated in the area of criminalistics?
Yes.
I'd like to ask you about just selected courses from your curricula vitae and have you give a little information about these, the ones that are relevant to crime scene investigation. In 1985, did you take a course in blood spatter interpretation at LAPD?
Yes, I did.
And what was that?
That involved the recognition of different blood pattern interpretation that we might find out at crime scenes.
Like blood drops and blood spatters and the like?
Yes.
And for what purpose do criminalists look at that kind of information?
A criminalist would look at that type of information to determine the direction from which a blood was traveling, or whether it was made by a gunshot or maybe a a gunshot, or was made by an object swimming and having the blood fall off of that object.
Okay. And in February of 1985, did you take a course in forensic microscopy?
Yes, I did.
What was that course about?
That course dealt with the trace evidence such as fibers and minerals and explosives.
Okay, and what's trace evidence?
Trace evidence is small particles of evidence such as hair, fiber, soil, and glass, that type of evidence.
What purpose do criminalists look at trace evidence? Are you comparing it to something, knowns to unknowns, or?
Yes, it's comparing knowns to unknowns,
Okay.
or identifying what something is in certain other cases.
Okay. And then in 1989, you took an advanced course in forensic microscopy, is that correct?
Yes,
So that would be a continuation of what you just described in terms of learning about trace evidence.
yes.
And these kinds of courses, the two courses
Hey,
in
Julie.
forensic microscopy, how do those equate with the college level criminalistics course?
They're just as rigorous.
So how many unit equivalent would you say, if you can give us that kind of information, would these courses be to the ones that you took at Cal State Long Beach?
4-unit class.
How many?
4-unit class.
Okay. And in 1987, you took a course in footwear identification.
Yes.
What was that course about?
That was a course to identify shoe print impressions to a known source. If, for instance, if I had a shoe print at a crime scene and a known shoe or an unknown shoe that came into the lab, I would be able to identify that shoe as having made that shoe print.
Or being consistent with it?
Yes.
All right. And you also took some seminars with the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. One of those was in 1991. Is that true?
Yes.
And did that particular seminar discuss, to your recollection, crime scene investigation?
Yes.
All right. And in 1990, you took a seminar at the California Association of Criminalists.
Yes.
Did that discuss any aspect of crime scene investigation, to your recall?
Yes, it did.
Do you remember at all what was discussed there?
In the 1991,
1990?
1990, I believe that was one that was involved with the Night Stalker case that was discussed at that seminar.
Okay, and then in 88, you
Richard
also attended a
Ramirez, the
California
Night
Association of
Stalker.
Criminalists meeting.
Yes.
And did that discuss crime scene processing that you recall?
Yes, it did.
Okay, now with respect to the other meetings that you also attended of either the American Academy or the California Association of Criminalists that we didn't specifically mention, but that are listed on your curricula vitae, do you recall one way or the other whether they discuss crime scene investigation particularly?
No, I don't call one way or the other.
What kinds of things in general are discussed at these meetings in the seminar portions?
In the seminars, analysis of different types of evidence are discussed, as well as legal issues, and sometimes crime scene investigation is also discussed.
Okay. And are you a member of the California Association of Criminalists?
Yes, I am.
And when did you become a member?
I became a member in late 1984.
Are you a member of any other professional associations?
Yes, I am.
Which one or ones?
I am a member of the Association of Firearm and Tool Mark Examiners.
How many years have you been a member of that?
Since 1992.
Now, I'd like to discuss some of your on-the-job experience at LAPD. First of all, when did you become a criminalist at the Los Angeles Police Department?
I became a criminalist in October of 1984.
And you also listed the various sections of the laboratory that you've been assigned to at various times on your curricula vitae.
Yes.
In 1994 through 87, excuse me, where were you assigned?
I was assigned to the toxicology unit from 1984 to 1987.
And what is toxicology?
Toxicology is the analysis of biological fluids for the presence of toxins or drugs.
When you say biological fluids, what kinds of fluids were you typically analyzing?
In our lab, we typically analyze urine and blood.
So you were dealing with biological specimens while you were at toxicology?
Yes.
And was there any training or any experience that you feel was particularly relevant in terms of crime scene processing that you got as a result of being in toxicology?
In toxicology, basic laboratory principles were employed, such as labeling, cleanliness, hygiene, and the appreciation for the being aware of cross-contamination issues.
When you say cross-contamination, what are you referring to?
That refers to mixing one sample with another or contaminating one sample with another sample.
I mean, like one blood sample with another blood sample.
Yes,
Okay. And in 1987 through 89, you were assigned to trace,
yes,
and you've already described to us what trace evidence is.
yes.
Is there anything about being assigned to the trace evidence section of the laboratory that you feel was relevant in terms of your experience in investigating a crime scene?
The trace analysis unit gave me an appreciation for what trace evidence can do for an investigation, uh, such as hair, fiber, and paint. That type of evidence can be very helpful sometimes in an investigation.
Do you also have to be aware of the proper packaging and labeling of
Yes,
specimens? Would that also be true of toxicology, that's important?
yes,
Okay. What about cross-contamination of samples? Is that an issue in trace?
yes, it is.
Okay. And after you were assigned to trace, you then went to firearms?
Yes,
Is that where you are now?
yes.
What is your exact title position in the criminalistics laboratory?
I am the Criminalist 3 assigned to the Firearms Analysis Unit.
Okay. And are there also criminalist 1s and criminalist 2s?
Yes.
When did you become a criminalist 3?
I became a Criminalist 3 in January of 1994.
What are the LAPD requirements for becoming a criminalist 3?
The requirements are 3 units of expertise in the field of criminalistics and 5 years on the job.
Well, when you say 3 units of expertise, what do you mean by that?
The lab is broken up into different sections, and to be a criminalist 3, you have to be qualified in 3 of those different sections.
So in your case, was it toxicology, trace, and firearms?
Yes.
Okay. And is there any test that's required or examination process that's required in order to become a criminalist 3?
Yes, there's a written and oral examination given by the laboratory.
What is the difference between a criminalist 3 and a criminalist 1 and criminalist 2?
A criminalist 1 is a entry-level position. A criminalist 2 is a journey level position, and a criminalist 3 is a lead position.
Okay, so when you first come to the laboratory, you're a criminalist 1?
Yes.
On the date of June the 13th, you were working with Andrea Mazzola?
Yes, I was.
And was she a criminalist 1?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of the duties of criminalists at crime scenes, what is the difference between a criminalist 1 and a criminalist 2 and 3?
A criminalist 1 knows the technical aspects of crime scene investigation. However, in our laboratory, a criminalist 1 will go out with a criminalist 3, and if any discretionary calls are needed to be made, a criminalist 3 will make them.
So a criminalist 1 has to be paired with a criminalist 3 at crime scenes under the current policies of the Los Angeles Police Department.
Yes.
When you were first starting out and you were a criminalist 1, was that also true?
The structure was a little bit different then, but I was always escorted by either a supervisor or a more experienced criminalist in the laboratory.
Meaning someone 2 or higher?
Yes.
All right. Now, during that process, when you were a criminalist 1, were you receiving on-the-job experience and training then from the more experienced people in terms of how to investigate a crime scene?
Yes.
Okay.
The quality of it and the quantity of it.
Okay, well, let's break that down. What do you mean by location?
by location, I mean where it is in relation to where the crime occurred. If there was a blood stain, for instance, 3 miles away, and then that would be a less significant stain if it could not be related back to the crime.
Okay, so you're trying to look for,
Yeah, I had that book, The Night Stalker. That was a pretty good book, well written. All right, we have to let this go until tomorrow. All of my notifications are going off that my courts are opening up. I need to get to work. I'm already behind the 8 ball. Thank you so much for watching OJ, guys. I appreciate it. We got 3 more months of science, and then we'll all be smarter. Thank you so much. I hope guys have a great day. Bye, guys. Love to Texas, too. I'm so sorry about all you're going through. Bye, guys.